This is a very short overview of the New England colonies and what's going to become the United States. Of course, any coverage of New England has to begin with Plymouth Colony. Founded in 1620, Plymouth Colony was founded for the express purpose of English separatists, Reformed Christians who were trying to avoid persecution by the English Anglican Church. In 1607, said church ramped up some of its persecutions, forcing a group of separatists, those who did not want to be a part of the Anglican Church because they did not believe it emulated the true life of Christ, to flee the country. In 1608, they did so, fleeing over to the Netherlands, where, as you can tell from the timeline, they would be for about 12 years before investors were willing to pay their way to the New World. The success in Jamestown, specifically from the sale of tobacco, made investors much more willing to provide the cost for new colonists to travel to what is going to be the Americas. Now, in this case, these settlers were given the express permission to settle in Virginia. As you can tell by the map, they did not settle in Virginia. In fact, they wound up several hundred miles to the north. A winter storm blew them off course, and they founded the Plymouth Colony in November of 1620. Before setting foot into the New World, the Pilgrims signed the famous Mayflower Compact, which, above other things, set forth the principles later to be echoed in the Constitution and Declaration of Independence of the rule of law and a rule by the majority. Now, most of the Pilgrims did not survive their first winter. They were supposed to arrive several hundred miles to the south and several months earlier. Because they didn't arrive until November 1620, they did not have the food and resources to get through a cold New England winter. In fact, those who did survive would not have survived without the help of local Native Americans, most notably through Tisquantum, better known as Squanto. The Plymouth Colony, however, will be overshadowed dramatically by the Massachusetts Bay Colony. In the United States today, we have a tendency to focus a lot on the Pilgrims just because of the lore of the first Thanksgiving and so on and so forth. But the reality is the Massachusetts Bay Colony that founded, amongst other cities, Boston, greatly overshadowed and then ultimately absorbed the Pilgrims. That being said, they were similar in their makeup. This is a group of religious separatists seeking to found a new colony where they can practice their religious beliefs, though there is absolutely no religious toleration here. These are not individuals who are seeking to establish a place where everyone can practice their religion. This is a place where this set group will practice their religion, and you have to be a part. The Massachusetts Bay Colony was another charter colony. It purchased the right to settle where it did, and was very shrewd in how it set it up, because what it did was it incorporated the colony in Massachusetts itself. What that means is, while the Crown thought it was giving a business license, really what the Massachusetts Bay Colony managed to do was create its own government, totally insular and separate from the English Crown. So effective was the Massachusetts Bay Colony that within only a couple of years, they went from 1,000 initial settlers to 20,000 settlers, by far and away the most successful of the early English colonies. But make no mistake about it, this was not a colony for everyone. Founded by John Winthrop et al., the purpose behind the Massachusetts Bay Colony was to live in accordance with the life of Christ, at least according to the separatists, and these were Calvinists. So these were followers of Jean Calvin, or John Calvin, as he is otherwise called. They firmly believe in Reformed Christianity, predestination, hard work, and so on and so forth. You had to be a member of the church to partake in any political life in the colony. That is, the right to vote was only for those who were a member of the church. And that's just one of the many different ways that the church controlled the lives of the individuals who moved to Massachusetts. Some people did not want to be a part of this sort of religiously controlled life. Two key people are Roger Williams and Anne Hutchinson, who in 1636 broke off and founded tiny Rhode Island. Rhode Island has an absolutely fascinating colonial history. If you want an example of how the colonies never worked in a concerted effort, especially when it came to opposing England, Rhode Island is your quintessential example. It's founded by dissenters, and almost immediately it is a hotbed of dissension. Between 1636 and 1640, there are no less than two efforts by different parts of tiny Rhode Island to break away from Rhode Island. The dissension within the people who founded Rhode Island was so strong that it almost tore this small colony apart before it had even lived for half of a decade. Rhode Island is then almost conquered by Massachusetts later on and has to strive over years and years and years to try to get its colonial charter recognized. Frankly, it's one of those unfinished questions, even as the American colonies spiral towards the revolution. New England economy was based strongly around the sea: fishing, timber, shipbuilding, manufacturing, trade, and commerce. Didn't have the type of farmland that the mid-Atlantic or southern colonies did, and that created an independent mindedness amongst the New Englanders that's going to bear fruit later on. Of course, no discussion of the New England colonies would be complete without at least touching on the Salem Witch Trials. Beginning in midwinter 1692, two young girls, Abigail Williams and Sarah Paris, claimed to begin to see visions. These visions, they say, were brought about by other members of the small Salem community. It was witchcraft. The witch hysteria swept through New England and Salem in that short year, 1692 to 1693. Salem, the hotbed of the controversy, would ultimately see 11 of its citizens killed as a result of wild accusations spreading everywhere, from allegations that someone had bewitched their crops to what's called spectral evidence, which means evidence that an individual, though they were physically somewhere else, were able to project themselves into somebody's room and cause them harm. Even Cotton Mather, who was a witch hunter but a famous New England preacher, said such evidence had no place in the courtroom. Didn't stop the people of Salem from accepting it. There is one suggestion by historians now that maybe it was ergot, which is a type of fungus that grows on barley. If that had gotten into the food supply, it's similar to LSD and how it affects the human psyche, brain, and vision, and so on and so forth. I personally find that less likely to believe. I think that the more likely reason for the Salem Witch Trials is tried and true human avarice, a desire for attention, and what we all know and love: rampant hysteria.